Like the last thing we said, why Chassidim didn't want to sell their chametz the chametz they received from the Rebbe's to any Yehudi, because it's hepech hakavod. Not only is it's disgraceful, it's not honorable. Is another issue. We said that basically by signing the chametz tagoy, the seller actively removes the holy ownership that the leftovers previously possessed. By giving to the Yidden, you're taking that kedusha. You're basically taking the kedusha and giving it to the goy, which the Chassid didn't want. Ches, the fize kem varza for vosses nit given the anhogo, so afkas and the shirayim v'chuli from the tzaddik. On this basis, we can explain why it was not the practice to declare a leftover tzaddik a hefker. Why didn't they just mafker it? Why don't they just make it ownerless? So beforehand we said, okay, selling is one thing. Why not just make it hefker? So he says like this: the gather from the hefker is up to the Rogachover. Came an ois taichin of tvei fan. The Rogachover says you can interpret the classification of hefker in two ways. See, their uftu from hefker is as their balabos is a misalik from the zach was as mafker und es gehört nicht zu keinem. Oder as durch the mafker sein bakumen alle Menschen as schulus for king in a door. So the Rogachover says you can look at hefker in two ways. Either the accomplishment of hefker is that the owner disassociates himself from the hefker object, and the object belongs to no one, or that declaring something hefker, everyone attains rights to it and ownership of the hefker object. So the Rogachover, that's what the Rogachover looks at. It's two ways to look at hefker. Do I look at hefker that once the balabos is mafker the thing, it belongs, and he's misalik, it belongs to nobody? Or do I say no? Now that he was mafker, everybody now gets a schos in the kinyan to the hefker. The Rogachover says, and their meat is the Rogachover Mervar Pluxus Amaroim. With this in mind, the Rogachover explains a machlekes amongst Amaroim. But einer hat ungeschabt Wasser von a Borshel Hefker Yom Tov zu lieb sein Chaber. When a person draws water for his friend from a public well on Yom Tov, Zogram Nachum, as the Tchum werd gerechen keragli mishnis malalei. Das says, as the Alpayim Amma from Mokum Shvisa werd gerechnet von dem Ort, where gefindt sich der Fahr, wenn man hat geschäbt die Wasser. Now, Rav Nachman says, so what's the case? So we're talking about a case where a person draws water for his friend from a public well in Yom Tov. So Rav Nachman says that the Shabbos boundary, the Tchum, as we know in Shabbos, a person is not permitted to walk more than 2,000 amas from his location. So this Shabbos boundary, Tchum Shabbos, he says, is based on the feet of the one from whom the buckets were filled. Meaning, the 2,000 amas from his location at the outset of Shabbos are calculated from the location of the person from whom the water was drawn. That's what he means. Karagli mishin ismalalei. Well, now, when Rav Sheshes sagt, as merechnen is karagli ha-mimali, as merechnen the alpayim amma from them mimali. Now, Rav Sheshes says we calculated based on the feet of the one who filled it, not the one who was filled for. So again, Rav Nachman says that the Shabbos boundary is calculated based on the feet of the one for whom the bucket were filled. Meaning the 2,000 amas are calculated from the location of the person for whom the water was drawn. Rav Sheshes says we calculated based on the feet, the one who filled it, which means that the 2,000 amas from the location of the person who drew the water. When the Gemara is up with Maikim Bifligi, and the Gemara says, what are they arguing? Mar Saba Bida Defkedahu, Mar Saba Bida de Shutvi. Now, the Gemara says the Gemara in Beisa. The Gemara says that what's the machlekes? The machlekes is that Umar Savar, that the well is ownerless, and the others maintain that the well is owned by partners. Now, what does that mean? Well, the Rogachav is the Rogachav Mevar as Beida Halton as the Ber is Hefker. Now, the Rogachav explains both Amorim hold that the well is Hefker because it's a Ber of Rishus Haram. Ber Rishus Haram doesn't belong to anybody. So, what's the machlekes? Now, Rav Nachman halt as the Geder von Hefker is alle haben in im aschus v'chilik. Which means Rav Nachman holds that Hefker, what does Hefker mean? Everybody has a chilek in the thing which is Hefker. Ownership of the thing which is Hefker. And therefore, okay, so, fine, let's see in a second. Nachman halt as the Geder von Hefker is alle haben in dem aschus v'chilik. Euch der Fahr, wenn man hat geschäbt, die Wasser, even for the person who you schlepped the water for. Therefore, hatten them din von bira the shitofihu. Therefore, Nachman holds that the ber is a partnership. Therefore, he holds that the ber is a partnership. Is b'meila, that's why he holds that. Where do you measure the Tchum Shabbos from? You measure the Tchum Shabbos from not for the person who's actually filling up the water. You reckon the Tchum Shabbos from the person whom you're filling for, and you can't, and you have to make sure that you're not filling up. Meaning, if the well is 2,000 amos down, that's where you're getting the water. It's a problem from where, not from the person who's filling up the water. It's the person who actually you're filling up for. Why? Because he holds that a ber b'rishus harabim is bida d'shutafihu. It's the hefker means that everybody has a chilek in it. Everybody has a sheshes halt. Hefker meint as does ger zu kenem. Omeila kenem memala zeicha sein far sich ayisham, aber nicht zeicha sein die Wasser fahr den zweiten und der Fahr kann mit rechnen der paar Mama von dem zweiten nur gerade memala. Now Mashenkin, the other opinion holds that sheshes maintains that hefker means that does not belong to anyone. Therefore, the one who draws the water can acquire the rights for himself, but cannot acquire rights over the water for someone else. So the 2,000 amas cannot be calculated from the recipient's location, but rather based on the feet of the one who filled it up. And as explained below, both viewpoints concerning how hefker works can be applied in our discussion. So the Rebbe is bringing on in Ches, why isn't, I mean, he didn't explain yet, but why isn't it that a person who gets shidayim from a Rebbe can mafker zayin? So he says that the Rogachover explains hefker can mean two ways. Either hefker means that once the balabas makes it hefker, he's misalik from the thing, so now it doesn't belong to anybody, or that when a balabas is mafker, everybody now has a schos of the king in the davar nifkid. And this, the Rogachover explains, the machlekes in Gemara and Beitza, when you have a pit of hefker, and now someone's filling it up on Yom Tif, so where do you measure the 2,000 amos? Do you measure it karagli mishin malo, or karagli hamamale, which means, do I measure it from the one who is being filled up for, or the one who's actually filling up? So Nachman is going to learn that you measure it from the person who it's being filled up for. And Absheshus holds it's being for the one who's actually filling up. Why? And the Gemara explains that Marsavar Bira is Hefkeda, and Marsavar holds Bira de Shitafi. What does that mean? So the Rogachover explains, everybody holds that a Bur is Hefker. Over them, what's the machlekes? So Nachman holds that the Geder of Hefker is that every single person has a schos in chelek of the Ber, which means even the person who it's being filled up for, even though he's not there. So now the person, so where do I measure it from? I measure it from the actual person who's being mekabel the water, the end recipient. Why? Because he holds bira de shetafihu. Mashenkin Sheshus holds no, hefker doesn't belong to anybody, and therefore a person cannot be zeicha, cannot. When I look at the measurements, I look at it from the person who it's being filled up. It's being filled up for. Sorry, it's the person who's actually filling up. Okay, Tess. Latest svara as hefker peil das das gehört zu alamin is moving by pashas of us, but nicht gewollt mafkes an die shayim. Now, on the approach that Hefker confers everyone with the right to an object, so it's understood why they would not want to make the leftovers Hefker.
That reason you can't make any chametz Hefker. It was going to belong to everybody.
The Torah says it can't belong to you.
So everyone can just send me. Let me.
You still have to make a pool of a kinyan. You still have to actually make a kinyan, a mashicha. You have to make some sort of. When we say that hefker belongs to everyone, it doesn't only mean that. It means that you have the rights that if you want to legally acquire it with kinyan, it belongs to you. It doesn't. It's not like a rush that automatically goes to you. Okay, noch einmal. Leute swara as hefker pearl das gehört zu allen Minnes moving bepashas for was man nicht gewollt mafke sein die Shirayim now. So now, why mitzad dem selben Tam wie bei Mechidus in the Yudi? Demalt wollt dem belangt zu alle Goyim von der Welt. Vadas bepashas seien sich Jiden, was der Zehn bekommen zu Pesach, mit Salak von bekommen dem Schos in dem hefker. Und das ist hefker für damit. Now, based on the approach that hefker confers everyone with the right to an object, so that's understood why they did not want the leftovers hefker for the same reason not selling to a goy, since the leftovers would then belong to all goyim on the earth, especially as simply understood the Yidden who did not want the chametz and Pesach, they relinquished their rights to the hefker, which is disrespectful to the Rebbe. So it's even deeper what I'm saying. The Rebbe is saying that verkehrt by the Yidden doesn't want the hefker. Why? It's because they don't want the chametz and Pesach. It's not like I said that you have to make a king. They don't want it. So who's automatically going to belong to? Who's going to belong to the goyim? And that's mamash is going to belong to all the goyim. By hefker, this is hepech hakoved. That's if you say how you look at hefker in that way. When an aim prat,
in that point of view, most of just everyone, all the Yidden can be hefker. Their chametz also belong to all the goyim.
Right.
Question is how do you? And you have to do Kolel to bring it to give it back, but.
Right, so Midir I said bit of masagi chametz. If you want mevatel it, what does mevatel mean? Bittel means a lot of it is making hefker,
right?
Like or
you charges, which is what you're saying.
Right. So you ring mafker, never them. So what's the reason that we said in the beginning of the sicha? What's the reason why we check for chametz? So there's two reasons. Either the Ran says is because we're worried that the bittul, everybody's heart is different, so your bittul might be different than my bittul, because everybody has a different translation of bittul. Or, like Taisa says, is that we're worried that since chametz and Pesach you're not used to it, because the whole year you have chametz, so you maybe you're going to go find a chametz, and you're not going to forget it's chametz and then need it, so we say get rid of it, or... Okay. The whole idea of mechiras chametz is like a new... It's a few hundred years old. It's not like a mole. They didn't store so much chametz. So it's like the whole, like, when Yidden started owning like breweries and these different businesses, they had to come up with mechanisms to sell the chametz. But on mall, a person had a chametz. They had a little. What did they have? A few gram. Nobody had money then, so they had a few. They had what they had for that day, and then they would throw out the rest. So they didn't. The whole mechiras chametz was like a new thing. Okay. When an ein prat is as mafke sein noch erger wie verkauft is zu an Yehudi. Now, in a particular regard, making shirayim hefker can be inferior to selling it to a goy. Shaser verkauft zu an Yehudi kann aufsuchen as a goy, welches mechsidi umasailam, am pasken wegen ihm, als ich dem Chedel am Habo, frat noch, as gees matzel dem Yidin von Iber sein, if Yisr Chametz für Pesach, und schicken B'shas, das wird hefken nach Kolel. Jetzt zu alle Goyim, euch nicht chsidi umasailam, und damit euch noch mehr bestirrt zu kveit Rabbi. Now, when you sell it to a goy, so you can sell it to a goy who's the righteous Gentile, who, like the Rambam says, will have a portion of the world to come, especially if this goy saves the Yid from transgressing the Isser of Chametz and Pesach. However, when the Shirayim becomes hefker for everyone, they belong to all goyim, even those who are not chsidi olam. So this would run counter to the obligation to respect persons of Rebbe. Good. So that's according to the first way of looking at hefker. Oich leite swara as hefker is nit azach, was at ashayches alamin. Even according to the opinion that hefker does not confer to everyone's rights, is moving. Nehmen Adaber Yaker, Adaber Shemigdusha was Mahatis Bakum Mirabi, und das Beleif Shalom Vatal sein, Lieberlosen, dem Bemakim Hefker, Zeichen Ingen von Hefker Hakabit, or das weiß if Hepech Hachshivas. For a person taking Hefker and just a holy article for one's teacher, nullifying and deposit it wholeheartedly in the Rosh Hashanah, it's also a matter of disrespect. It shows that the chayfetz is not an important. It's not chashuv by the person. My time hat euch das Masechet sich mishtabel gemeint dort dem as die Zugkehrers sollen gehört zu einer Judi, als ein Hefker soll sie sein Innekol Kvik-Tushas Adel Menashab aufessen und sie sollen very damal wasik shari. There, for this reason, instead of transferring ownership of the candies to a goy or declaring it hefker, Tzemach Tzedek told his grandson he should eat them, making them part of his blood and flesh. Rebbe says, "And murder the gemara the very chinuch." This is for all of us. Von Kanal kommt arois noch mehr ba'afla di'hirof and geidel v'ishtadlus v'ifin chinuch. From all of this, the lesson taught concerning the importance and efforts of chinuch becomes extraordinarily apparent. Bald as den Zugekehr seinen Gewinn beim Rebben, but Ashab Nishmas Eden, as they tire, as Slidem hat sie gehalten ganz bei sich b'reshusei. These candies are so precious to the Rebbe Ashab that he kept them whole in his possession. I feel him avata given if them as alvern dam basik sorry, which means that he was forgoing the opportunity that it transforms part of his body, it should become one with him. Und es ist dabei nicht da, kein Isser zu sehen, mafker sein, other verkaufen. There's no Isser to go ahead and mafker or to sell it. Hat man doch yeah, and also Api Halacha, you could be mafker. Api Halacha to be mafker is not a problem. Api Halacha to sell is not a problem. The question is, why didn't the Tzemach Tzedek go ahead and tell the Rebbe Hasham's father, go ahead and mafker it or sell it? So we said because of the Kedusha, it's disrespect. So the Rebbe says, haben doch lechaire besser gedarf in Ksalib ton volt gehat tamid euch nach Pesach, das volt im tamid maske mehr gewen if the Kedusha kniese, the chede fully was sehr schlimmer als Yusei nekra Kedusha und the Fisha is das gewen b'shus any Yodi, es doch gewen a kind ben shalish, nicht gewusst davon. So lechaire, if you think about it, the effect, imagine he has this candy. Every time he comes into the room, he's thinking about his candy, and that reminds him, oh, this is from the Zayda, you're going to say, according to some opinions, maybe he doesn't have the Kedusha. The 3-year-old doesn't know that. And yet, what do we say? We say that he didn't allow this. So he says, Nor does Zeppin Goiduli Stadlus in Inachin. This matter shows us a tremendous effort that we must place in education. Nit nur in Yoni Deiraisa Rabbanon, afilu nahidim mitzvah, nor ichin min hogim in Yonim v'chsidim, when as yeder zav zol zan amitose. Everything has to be, it's not only talking about if it's, to say, biblical or rabbinical, or even beautifying a mitzvah, but also concerning custom and its affairs of chsidim, and that everything has to be done authentically. Und das darf, wenn tan nit nur dann, wenn das kommt on green, nor il b'shas, es ist verbunden mit der Tnua, was lefi Yarach HaMechunech is an idea from Mr. Nebuch Mr. Saratz. Now, this must be done not only when things are easy, but even when, for the one being educated, it's considered a matter of Mr. Nefesh. Und wie kam es sich Purim, was man gefindt, euch mit der Mechinech von Kedushas, Mori v'chomer Adar Ratzma, you find this in line with numerous stories concerning the education of the Frierdiker Rebbe. Was demolt gewohnt min ein dem Kind nicht nur Shanis Midesav Ativim, nor Reich Tivi Tiva Midesav. So we train the child to change his natural attributes and the nature of his attributes. Und Chosh das is a derech in Chinuch, was mit der Zelt bei der Yechidus School in Yisrael. Die Balma das megalig ben jeden einem is das a Hayra for jeden. Und wie gesagt in der Siche, hat Chinuch darf mehr haben. Now, although this method of education is applied to exceptional individuals, leaders of the Yidden, since the story was disclosed publicly, it shows that this is a source of guidance to everyone. As the previous Rebbe said in his Sicha, such an education is crucial. Und dem Koyach, if the roof, Hatlin from Avicenna was Basar Resha Gufa Azal Sugain Berchisem Udachem Asherinu. What's the forgot this. And Rebbeim conferred to us the ability to do so. That's a settlement, I think. The body follows the head. They've empowered us to emulate their ways and follow the paths that blazed us for eternity. Okay, Shabbos, beautiful sister.